And I looked down and I looked through my hands and I said, oh my gosh, if this is death, there's nothing to be afraid of. I came out of my body, went into a sort of tunnel like event, saw things flashing by me. And then an angel, guardian angel, stopped me when I reached above the planet. And he said, turn around and look down at the earth and tell me what you see. And I said, well, I see lines coming up. And he said, do you know what those lines are? And I said, no. And he said, those are prayers. The thin ones are individual prayers, and the thick ones are prayers where multiple people are praying for the same thing.
Life is but a dream. Life is but a dream. Life is but a dream. Yeah. Hello, you beautiful souls. Welcome to the Praise the Sun podcast, where I'm honored to have on my guest, Dr. Scott G. Robinson. How are you doing?
Every day I'm walking and breathing, Sage. I am wonderful. I am grateful to be alive and on planet Earth, fulfilling my mission and purpose in life. So, how are you
Mission
doing?
and purpose. Yes, I love that. I'm doing fantastic. I'm so happy to have you here and have this conversation. And I know it'll be a very enlightening conversation for our audience. So, yeah, fulfilling my life's purpose as well.
Excellent. And
Awesome.
I'm glad to be here with your audience live in Chicago, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my message.
Yes, awesome. So, for our audience who are not quite familiar with your what you do, could you explain for the audience?
Well, at the current moment in time, thanks to my near death experiences, I do alternative medicine and spiritual healing techniques and help people who have chronic and serious illnesses, most of which have been written off by the medical community and either left for dead, in which case I have about 12 weeks to work with them. They're usually in hospice, or they have a chronic and serious illness, which they've been told they can no longer have regular standard medicine for. And they're looking for alternatives and answers. And the basis by which I do that is through alternative medicine and, of course, my favorite, spiritual healing. I can't leave home without God, because that's part of my near-death experience training. Was I was sent back to Earth to teach a simple technique to heal yourself and share that with other people. So I do that. I travel around the country. I originally was doing this in California. They changed the rules in California, and you couldn't participate being a doctor using God. So it was time to find a new answer, and I came to Florida. But I also travel Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Santa Barbara, San Diego. I've been all over the place. And of course, I used to live and work and go to school in Chicago. So hopefully that answers the question and opens the door to what are some of the more specifics that I deal with in my. So, Sage, hopefully that works for you.
Yes, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you for that. I'm actually curious to what your life was like before that near death experience, which we're definitely going to talk about for the audience. But what was your life like before that happened?
Standard, regular, fair, Western organization, medical background. But actually, I have to go back a little farther. My first near death experience, of course, was when I was 17 years old and died in a car wreck and ended up in the morgue. Before that, I was your average teenager on hormones, kind of loner type personality, a little bit of a nerd. I mean, I used to do math quizzes and math tests for fun. I would build things in my mind and then with toothpicks create things. Um, I had a gift and ability already before my first near death experience as a teenager. I had this ability to bet and gamble on football games, baseball games, anything, sporting events. The funny thing was, though, God would not allow me to win if I bet for myself. I had the ability to tell other people who was going to win the game and by how many points, the point spread, and my friends would bet. The challenge came to be where, I was getting to be popular, but for the wrong reasons. And the friends, so called, were basically interested in how much money they could make, but not interested in helping me. Since I couldn't benefit from that, I stopped sharing that and realized, what was I really doing this for? To be popular? Nah. So I went back to being a nerd and went on to college. And then I had my first near death experience. Now, um, you had asked, what was it like between the two near death experiences? I sort of went back to being the normal doctor. By that time, I had already graduated from chiropractic college. I'd gone on to become a medical examiner and then a medical evaluator. I had practiced in Israel. I'd gone all over the world. I'd been in England and Belgium, Italy, Greece, Canada, Mexico. Came back and started to practice up in Northern California in San Francisco. Got involved in ego and greed issues, and God reminded me, I'm not here for ego and greed. I'm here to help other people. I had my second near death experience where I ended up on the operating table and came back with some more gifts, and then life changed. So, Sage, hopefully that answers those questions as well.
Yeah, let's talk about that first near death experience when you were dead in the morgue, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So how did that even happen? Like what? How that occur?
Um, my dad was a car salesman in the Bronx in Jerome Avenue, just down the street from Yankee Stadium. For graduation from high school, he was a Jewish kid, went to Catholic school, and he got me a used car. In those days, it was a Mercury Montego for $450, and it was revved up with a 302 engine, red interior, white exterior with a black Landau roof. The I was just going to go out, have some fun after graduation with my friend Lou. We were going to go to Lake Opatcon in New York. It's on the New York New Jersey border, actually. It kind of divides and straddles the states. And I had never been fishing. So I went to pick him up 5 o'clock in the morning, and a strange thing happened as I got back onto the highway, and he fell asleep next to me. And I got onto Route 80 heading west so I could pick up the road to go up north to Lake Opatcon. And I looked down and I looked through my hands and I said, oh my gosh, if this is death, there's nothing to be afraid of. I came out of my body, went into a sort of tunnel like event, saw things flashing by me. And then an angel, guardian angel, stopped me when I reached above the planet. And he said, turn around and look down at the earth and tell me what you see. And I said, well, I see lines coming up. And he said, do you know what those lines are? And I said, no. And he said, those are prayers. The thin ones are individual prayers, and the thick ones are prayers where multiple people are praying for the same thing. And they said, we got to go now. I said, okay, that's nice. And we went down that tunnel again, and we arrived on the other side where I met my grandfather, who I'm named for. And he said, you know, you don't belong here yet. You haven't reached your purpose and missions in life. You have to return. So, being that you haven't fulfilled your purpose and missions in life yet, I have to send you back, but I have someone to introduce you to. And he took me into a small room where I saw three beings. Two were facing me, one was facing away from me with long brown hair. And he turned around and I said, are you the being everybody calls Jesus? And he said, I'm called by many names, but because of your heritage, I will call you the little Prince of Peace, and you can call me Big Brother. And if you need me, call out to me, but I have to send you back now. You have to fulfill your purpose and missions in life. But if anything happens, just let us know and we'll be there for you. So I went, shoot. And I took my right hand and hit my left hand. So it's my right fist and hit my left hand. And the next thing I know, I ended up in my body again, but this time in the morgue. Now, what had transpired in between the time I left, I didn't really know what had occurred. My car had spun out of control. I don't know if anybody hit it or not. My friend Lou grabbed the steering wheel and kept us from going down into a ditch. He drove, he would tell me later, I would find this out in a report. He drove me to the nearest hospital, which was St. Joseph's in Patterson. And I would wake up briefly for a split second going, where the heck am I? What am I doing in the right side of the car? and the door opened up. I fell out, hit the boot of a New Jersey State Super Trooper, a highway patrolman, and the last thing I heard was, "He's DOA." And that's when I went back down towards the gates of heaven. Apparently, in this interim, the police officer who had pronounced me DOA and had my body placed in the morgue had called my parents and told them to come identify my body, and I was in a serious accident. So they did. My mom and dad drove. By the time they got there, it was 2 hours later. My mom told my dad, "Let's not go into the emergency room. Let's go to the back. Let's go where the morgue is." They parked the car. They walked in the door. It was a dark hallway. They saw a body right outside the door of the morgue as it was being wheeled into the refrigeration unit. And then as they got closer, the man that was pushing the body vanished. They didn't know what would happen or what happened to him. They figured because it was a dark hallway, he just decided to leave my body there and disappear. And it would be about 35 years later that they would find out who he was and why he was there. So my mom and dad find my body as it's being pushed into the refrigeration door, and they pull back the cover, and I sat up. "Mom, Dad, I met God. I met Grandpa." They said, "Son, you had a head injury. You're going to have to come with us." And they said, "Okay, we're going to take you." But as I sat up, I went, "Oh man, I have the worst headache." And Mom grabbed one side, Dad grabbed the other side. They helped me hop off of this metal gurney, and they walked me down the corridor, out the double doors, put me in the back of the car, where I laid down with the worst headache ever. They would take me to Montefiore Hospital the next day, where I would see a neurologist, and he would explain to me things I didn't have a clue about. They would tell me that my DMT levels were off the charts. That's dimethyltryptamine. And it indicated that I had a near-death experience. But since this was really new to my neurologist, he gave me a book by Raymond Moody and said, "I think you should read this, Life After Life, and it might answer some questions." In the meantime, he asked me not to drive till they could do some more tests. And he asked me to go to school without having to go back and forth. So I would live on campus. He wrote me a note. And for the next year, I would live on campus at Montclair State, where I would learn all about near-death experiences and find some other people like myself who had unique things occurring to them and did not know what to do with the gifts that began to turn on. I could smell the angels. I knew when good guys were in the room and when bad guys were in the room. And not only had that gift for telling when people were going to win a game and how much, I was able to use statistical data and analysis, because I like that anyway, to help other people for other things, for probability and statistics. And I noticed that my IQ would go up. It jumped about 11 points from before the near death experience to the second near death experience, and go up a little higher. And I would then go to college, then professional school. After professional school, where I was a chiropractor, I would go on to become a medical examiner. I lived in California, and then the second near death experience occurred. And that was as a medical examiner, then a medical evaluator, then a qualified medical evaluator. I was hired by judges, courts, and insurance companies to go track down people who had workers' comp related issues or tort law issues, and then do exams. I'd be called one night by a judge and say, "Please, can you be up here in Sacramento? I need for you to track down this patient, find him, do the exam, and the next morning show up for the review in front of court." So I had my own plane, and it was really neat. I got paid in order to fly my own little plane, Beach Sierra C-24R, a retractable landing gear aircraft. It was a baby Bonanza with a 210 horsepower engine. And I would go on practice missions previous to every time the state would hire me to go do something somewhere. So whether I was flying to Arizona or going to Nevada, or in this case, Northern California, I would practice. And on one very cool December day in practicing with my flight instructor, Lisa, I would be at Lake Arrowhead and in the San Bernardino Mountains, and I would take off from that runway, go up to 12,000 feet, where I suddenly lost consciousness. I began to black out, slumped over the yoke, and my instructor with me pushed the plane down to between 9 and 8,000 feet. So it's almost 8,000 feet. I regained consciousness. The oxygen level went up in my brain. We flew the plane down to our landing site in Long Beach. I got out, drove to my flight exam. Every pilot has to have a flight exam annually. So I was due for one anyway. When I went to see my flight examiner, he examined my blood and everything else, took x-rays, and said, "You're bleeding internally, you have anemia. We really don't know what's going on. I'm going to send you to the Keck Institute at University of Southern California." And that's where they did more extensive tests on me. And the doctors said, "Hey, we don't like what we see. We see a shadow on your kidney. We think it's this diagnosis," which I won't share with people on purpose. And that has to do with spiritual reasons. But if you don't take our medicine and our therapy, we don't think you have long to live. So please go home and get all your ducks in a row, get all your paperwork in order. We either think you're going to have body parts removed, or other things are going to happen. And I said, "No, I'm not going to take your medicine. I don't accept your diagnosis. I don't accept your prognosis. I'm going down to Mexico, where I heard of people being healed from other alternatives." And I went down there and I said, "I'm either going to live or die trying, but I'm going to do it my way." Or in this case, like Frank Sinatra said, hit the highway. But I went down to Mexico, worked with the Gerson Institute and Hulda Clark, Cure for All Diseases. And I came back 3 months later, where the doctors at the Keck Institute said, "We can't find anything wrong. Maybe we made a mistake. Maybe we misdiagnosed you." And I said, "You do realize you're talking to a former medical examiner?" And the doctor said, "Uh-huh." My file disappeared, and then he retired. The other doctor died, and the third doctor gave me such a hard time. I really wanted to punch him in the face, but he was 7 feet 1 inches tall, and I could barely reach his knee. So I had to go out, do a prayer, and it was at this time, and from the second near-death experience occurred while I was on the operating table, that the other side said to me, "You will learn a simple technique to heal yourself and share that with other people." And that technique is called Einstellen, which means tuning into the source, asking for help and healing. Einstellen. Einstellen. It's a German word, and I would be led on a new path. And instead of being a chiropractor and a medical examiner and a court doc, I went into doing help and healing on the alternative paths and the spiritual path to help people with chronic and serious illnesses. And so I went on eventually to write a book, There Are No Lines in Heaven, which you can find on Amazon, or you can go to the website, https:// there are no lines in heaven.com. I also went into teaching in DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, for colleges and universities, besides helping chronic and serious illnesses and people with those issues. And it changed my life. I went on to TV shows and I was asked to do interviews. And of course, Sage, you asked me to come on and talk about what I do and to help people now. So hopefully that answers the questions for you and how I got here. And I'm grateful.
Yes, thank you so much. What a powerful story, Doctor. So, what is Einstellen? How can we learn that technique?
Einstein was taught by a German mystic, Christian German mystic, back in the 40s and 50s. They lambasted him, gave him a hard time. They actually prevented him from helping and healing. But he taught this technique called Einstellen, which started off in Germany and then spread. It's now in 137 countries. There's a group called the Medical Scientific Group, or MWF, which I'm part of, which then evaluates this Einstein and how it can help people and create miraculous astonishments in their reality. It is called a lifesaver for many people. They've been written off. That's why I work with a lot of people who've been written off by the medical community and left for dead. And Einstein is done in multiple languages. I work with people in 42 different languages in 17 different countries personally, but it's around the world in about 137 different countries. And all of the doctors in this group believe God is the greatest physician and there is no incurable. Now, I use this in order to link in to push away negative energy. I use the power of prayer, Einstein, pushing faint matter, it's called, and pushing away negative energy from people's body and auric fields. And then I help them remove negative emotions from around their body and from within, and then provide verbal frequencies for their ability to heal themselves. Now, since God is the greatest physician and we are children of God, I teach them techniques so that they can be connected to God. They're God's patients. They're not my patients. They're my clients, but they're God's patients. And I help them reconnect and reestablish that connection to the divine. So they reevaluate who and what they are, what their missions and purposes are in life, and they now get to go down a different path. So, regardless of the fact that they've been written off, they now have an option. Do they no longer accept that diagnosis or prognosis, or are they going to choose a different way of doing things in this reality? Now, you can't stop everybody from dying. It's not possible. For some people, about a third of them, they are going to go home. But a third of them are going to live much longer, and a third of them are going to have miraculous healing events or astonishments to occur to them. And as a result of that, for those people that are going to go home, it's my job and my task to help them be prepared physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, along with their families, so that when the time comes for them to leave this planet, they do it with peace, grace, and ease. And if they're going to stay, they have to learn to fight. So, a couple other things that I work with are people who are in bad shape, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and they want to give up. And I remind them, please, you're not here to commit suicide, although some people do. If you can choose a better path, please don't commit suicide. It may mean you're going to have to recycle and come back and do this all over again. The other thing is, please don't hate anyone or anything, because hate is the one emotion that will get you to come back and recycle almost instantaneously, because hate has got to be the worst vibrational energy ever. When I see what's going on in the Middle East, Palestinians and Israelis fighting and killing each other, it just means that the hate will perpetuate, and you'll have a lot of Israelis coming back as Palestinians next life, and you'll have a lot of Palestinians coming back as Jews and Israelis. And that's not going to do anything but perpetuate that. Same thing with Ukraine and Russia. Same thing. That hate will just perpetuate. And then the next thing is going to be Taiwan and China. Hate will perpetuate. And you need to break the cycle and no longer accept that. So, two things again that you don't want to do: you don't want to commit suicide. And number two, you don't want to hate anyone or anything. So we take those techniques that I just discussed, especially the Einstein, since that was the simple technique to heal yourself, and share that with other people. And I do that all over the world. Actually, Sage, you had seen me on one of these previous podcasts. I'm on Spotify, I'm on podcasts, I'm on YouTube. I do live lectures, I do things for colleges and universities, and I help remind people that diversity, equity, and inclusion does not just mean for colleges and universities or the workplace. It also is why the book had its name, There Are No Lines in Heaven. One of my patients, Mr. Brown, who was a really devout Christian, knew me through the Gerson Institute. And I said, "Why are you hiring me? I'm a Jewish guy." And he said, "Because you got to meet Jesus." And he said, "I've never met Jesus and I'm devoutly Christian." And I said, "Okay." But I said, "Do you remember Jesus was Jewish in his life? No matter who or what he was before he was Jesus, he came from the other side, but in that life he was Jewish." And they said, "But that's why I want to hire you." I said, "Okay." So I helped him when he was going through the Gerson Institute. He would have a near death experience himself, and he would come back and he'd say, Dr. Robinson, you're right. There are no lines in heaven when you get to the other side. Everybody's welcome. Jews and Christians and Buddhists and Hindus and Muslims and blacks and whites, Hispanics, Asians, people from every background, they're all up there." And I said, "I told you." And so he said, "Hey, you were right." Now, eventually he did die and he went over the other side. But beforehand, I said, "Can I use that title, There Are No Lines in Heaven, for my book?" And he said, "Sure." And so on the day of his death, an angel appeared in my room and said, "There are no lines in heaven when you reach the pearly gates. No Christians in the center, Jews to the left, Muslims to the right, for you are all children of God and you're all welcome." And the angel went on to laugh how silly human beings are, that we simply use this body that we have, no matter what color it is, what religious background, nationality, or language. We use these bodies to experience life in whatever experience we are required that will bring us closer to God. And as a result, there are no lines in heaven. There shouldn't be any lines and any political reasons for anything that we do on earth. We happen to have a country that's right now split in everything it does. The world is split, good and bad, good and evil, 70% going to the dark side, 30% going to the light. But I am here not to judge anybody or anything. I'm here to help. And for those that want to wake up and learn that there is nothing but an experience ahead of us, we're all different on purpose, and thank goodness for our differences so that we can really utilize them for the benefit of who we are and what we are. I come from an adopted grandmother who was a black lady who's also was born into a Jewish black family, born into slavery, and her family were Jews, and the family was all adopted into black Jews. And there is there is a building at Georgetown University named for Martha's family, Martha Hawkins. It's the Martha Hawkins building. It's named for her grandmother. And I have a Buddhist Chinese family members, both Vietnamese and Chinese family members. So I have a really diversified background. We have Jews and Buddhists and Hindus and Muslims and Christians and Catholics in our family. We have every kind of background you could think of. So there was no prejudice in my family, no white fragility issues. And basically, I use all of that from the love from my family to be able to help other people. And I'll finish up with one other thing, Sage. And that was my story for my mom and dad. Both of them, when it came time to go home, came back 3 days after their death to let me know that everything was fine, that they were doing well, that they sent love. They each gave me a gift. My father gave me a sense of humor. And as a result, my little patients call me Dr. Silly. My mom told me 3 days after her passing, "No more grieving, no more guilt, gotta go now." And she took away all the guilt that I had had and all the grief that was there following her death, and it was gone. You don't have to grieve. She knew very well that the grief she experienced after my father's death caused heart issues for her, and she wanted to make sure that that did not happen. So the book came out just as she was passing away at age 97. And as a result, I've now had 2 editions that came out. The third edition will come out this summer. It's 400 pages long. The book will not stop growing. There'll be more alternatives in there. And of course, my favorite things, Einstein and spiritual healing techniques that help people create miraculous astonishments in their life. So I really am grateful for the experience of being on today's show. May your audience glean what they need from this experience. and be able to take it with them to help themselves and other people. I'm there for anybody that needs me. You can contact me at the information that Sage will have below this link, or if this is interviewed, 760-917-2625. That's 760-917-2625, or get to me through my website, there are no lines in heaven.com. God bless to everybody. And unless there's some other questions or things that you want to cover, Sage, I think I covered everything that you wanted me to today. I just thank you for the opportunity.
Oh yeah, I actually have plenty of other questions for you, Doctor.
Good. Let's go for them.
Yeah, so the Einstein process is, if I'm understanding correctly, it's a prayer.
Einstein is tuning into the source and asking for help and healing. And how you do it is you give away all your burdens, your worries, your fears, your concerns, something from yesterday, something about today, about money, about marriage, about the government, what's going on in the world. You give it all away. You sit in what's called an open posture with your feet flat and your hands, palms up. And then you ask God to send you down the healing stream, the Holy Spirit, and you will connect to this heavenly energy, which there's nothing like it. Now, I go into greater depth and detail into what Einstein is and how to use it, specific portions of the prayer. It's like prayer and meditation on steroids. The doctors I work with are familiar with steroids. So it's not prayer, it's not meditation. It's like prayer and meditation stuck together on steroids. Now, normal meditation is done quietly. This is actually done with out loud, basically. And it will quiet your mind. That's something I could never do. I could never quiet my mind. I could never do TM or any of those things. My mind was racing all of the time. And so this actually quiets your mind, but you speak out loud what you need, want, and desire from God while you're doing with it or while you're doing it. And it makes a profound difference. If it was not for the Einstein, I would have been dead a long time ago. It helped me from being really messed up physically, mentally, and emotionally to clear a lot of things. Now, I add a lot of things to it. I add prayers, specific prayers for clearing negative energies around my clients and myself so I can use my empathic abilities. I'm an empath, I can feel other people, and I can connect to other people that way. But I need to clear the energy. And people said, as an empath, how come you don't pick it up from groups and other people? And I can. So I stay away from group settings. I try to stay away from football games or basketball games or large group settings on purpose because I can pick up other people's stuff. But I use these prayers to block out the negative energy and allow me to feel them in whatever way. My medical background now, when I feel something in a certain place in my body, then I know through my medical background what's going on and where. So I help them with their earthly diagnosis and figure out what spiritually is going on. Because spiritually, spirit rules the physical. 95% of all healing when you're doing Einstein comes from the spiritual side. Only 5% actually happens in the physical. And as a result, unless you have an intense desire to heal and not accept the earthly diagnosis, you may linger and languor with what's ever going on in your physical body. So I use the alternative medicine to help people get through all of these byproducts and side effects. But actually, when you're talking about Herxheimer reactions that occur with medicine, this is not Herxheimer. Its actual German term is Regulungen or regulation or spiritual detoxification. And as a result, you have to be aware of what is going to happen to you. So it's not like you're going to break out in a Herxheimer reaction from a chemical or have a side effect, but you need to know that you might get zapped. My mom used to say it hurts so good and it feels fantastic. And you can actually hurt and laugh at the same time when you're doing Einstein, and you know it's God touching you, not something evil coming out of you or through you. Now, what happens with this Regulungen is sometimes the good is pushing out the bad and it gets trapped in your body. And whatever the physical, mental, or emotional issue is, it can actually fight. The good and evil have a battle between them, and that's regular. Most of the time, it's emotional issues that get trapped, and you need to know what to do and how to do it. So on the weekends, I teach people Einstein and how to use it and to their greatest and best benefit, and what they need to do and what they need to expect. When I'm working with people, I either do it online, like we're talking now, or I'm live and in person. Same thing with colleges and universities. I teach eraser method. That's ER, small a s r, emotional release and stress relief. A real quick, I'll call it quick and dirty, to get rid of negative emotions that don't serve you in 60 seconds. And so we use all these different things. We combine them in an alternative package along with Einstein and teach people what's best for them. Now, some people don't like Einstein. Some people don't want to do Einstein. It's just not for them. So we have other alternatives for them. It's just my favorite technique to utilize it. It's not a prayer. It's not meditation. It's like a prayer and meditation on steroids, and you have to be prepared. The biggest group that I've been getting lately, besides people who call me up and they said they wanted to commit suicide, and I said, oh, we got to talk about that. The other group are healers, people like yourself who've had an awakening and realize we got to do something differently. So I get a lot of people, so called healers, people who have healing gifts and abilities, and I work a lot with people who are healers. I have a woman who's from Sweden who lives in the Caribbean, and she is a healer and helps people heal. She lives on a small island. I have a healer in Sweden who helps people heal. Again, I have a lot of clients in Sweden lately, and in Norway, and in Denmark, and in the Netherlands. I have people in Italy and Greece, Israel and Palestine, believe it or not, and Australia, New Zealand, Tasmania, India, Pakistan, China, South Korea, as well as Japan and the Philippines. And I have people in Peru. Lately, I've been getting people from Peru, Brazil, Argentina, Venezuela, Canada, and of course, Mexico, where I actually lived and worked for a while with the Gerson Institute. So I see people from all life stories, backgrounds, and the fact is that we're all children of God and we all have the worthiness and desire to heal. You have the ability to do so. The bottom line is going to be to God and whether or not it's your time to heal in this life, or do you have much more work to do? So that's it in a nutshell.
Is there any particular time of day that one should do Einstein? Like, should you wake up and do it, or before bed, or?
People do it when they wake up in the morning, before they go to work, and before they go to bed. It's recommended that you do Einstein twice a day, usually 12 hours apart. Why? Recharge your batteries, your body's battery, but you're recharging your body's battery through the soul. So Einstein actually retunes and recharges your soul, which recharges your organs, which recharge your battery, and you're able to function better. The only time that we recommend you don't do Einstein is about 8 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock at night. And just like on Earth, we have low tides, oceans. There's a low tide energetically, so we ask that the person does not do that at 8 o'clock, between 8 and 8:15 in the morning, or 8 and 8:15 at nighttime. When I'm the most tired, I want to do an extra Einstein. And when I had the most physical issues, I did a third and fourth Einstein. And it was during these extra Einsteins that I actually got my help in healing. One of them occurred while I was inside an MRI machine. I was having tremendous pain. I didn't know what regulungen meant. I had no clue. I had never experienced it before. So in 2009, I was hurting really bad. And my parents drove me to the doctor that took care of my MRIs. I had had four previous MRIs, and they put me in the MRI machine. And halfway through, the doctor stopped the MRI machine and said, I don't know what you're complaining about. I've seen your 4 previous MRIs and you're 80% improved. What are you doing? Tell me. And I shared with them about Einstein. And it was at that point, my doctor was originally from Persia, which is now Iran. And she told me that she had to sign paperwork that said she couldn't do any divination or dealing with God, or God could not be involved in her practice in California. And as a result, I had just learned at that moment that those doctors who had to sign these documents before they practiced in California were not allowed to bring God into the conversation. So she said, please don't tell me anymore. I'll lose my license. I went, oh my gosh. So I started to help people other ways. Now, actually, when COVID came about, it was actually some of the best things because now you didn't have to be in person. You could do these teachings online. However, with the current situation in California getting too expensive, and with that particular rule, I felt after my mom's passing, it was time to move. And I said, where am I going to go, God? And he said, Florida. So I ended up in Florida. And I still see people in other states and definitely now 14 or 15 other countries. But Florida is a little bit more open to the religious and spiritual aspects of life. And I have to tell the audience there's a difference between religion and spirituality. Spirituality does not depend on any given religion, but religion depends on spirituality to exist. So you don't have to be within any formed religious belief, but you do have to have the spiritual connection to the source and believe that you are a child of God. And there's much more to this physical reality than meets the eyes. So hopefully I answered that question for you as well.
That was really brilliantly said. I've never heard anyone say that before because that's pretty much how I interpret it as well. The last few lines about spirituality and religion, because it's certainly true that spirituality can exist on its own without any type of religion, but religion certainly needs spirituality to exist. So,
And you
yeah.
know really well, you have to be very careful because the government puts the two together. They don't differentiate between spirituality and religion. So if you want to make a point, be very aware of that when it comes to legal things. Same as DEI versus DIE in colleges and universities. You have to be very careful or cognizant of the terms you use. And it's all about that. Like in California, you know that you can't use the word cure in California. Only an MD can cure in California. Again, it used to be an MD and God could cure in California, but today they've taken God out of the equation in California, and only an MD using prescribed medications that were authorized is allowed to claim a cure. And a cure in California means you survived 10 years and 2 days after the prescribed therapy. The only thing is, using the prescribed therapy usually only allows a patient to survive 9 years and 4 months. So, how many cures are you going to get? In Florida, God can still cure. So, it's important to realize that. And I know that you're really spiritual, especially after you left the military and you went and did a 180-degree turn and you went from being a soldier and a fighter to a lover and a provider of help and healing for other people from every background in life, especially in Chicago where you live. I loved Chicago. It was one of the most wonderful towns to live in. Everybody had their own neighborhood and everybody was proud of their neighborhood, but everybody was integrated at the same time and they would share each other's joy. I mean, you'd have different festivals on different weeks in the summertime, and you would enjoy everybody's gifts. And of course, we were talking earlier how Michael Jordan was there when I was there, and he changed Chicago. Of course, my grandmother lived in Chicago. Martha Hawkins was living in Chicago, and she took care of, for the city of Chicago, when somebody abandoned a house or a building, it was her job to come in and clean that out. And Martha had 5 large storehouses that she would use, and on any given weekend, she would sell what she had taken from people had abandoned, and she would sell that by the University of Chicago. And there's a place where people would go to, like a farmer's market and a flea market, and she would sell things on the weekends. So I can't remember the name of the street. I think it was called Maxwell Street in Chicago. Are you familiar with that?
I don't know where Maxwell is, but I've heard of Maxwell Street.
Yeah. So I just remember that from living there for 4 years.
Ah, okay. So, um, I remember you were saying something about breaking a cycle. Say like Palestinians have to come back as Israelis, and the Israelis have to come back as Palestinians. So when we have that cycle of perpetuation because of something like hate, um, how do we even become aware of a cycle that's being present? Because we have that veil of forgetting once we incarnate. And if I was a Palestinian in past life, I wouldn't remember that unless I've done some deep spiritual work. So how
The
do
biggest
people?
thing is if you're not coming from love, you're not coming from God. If you're coming from hate, fear, worry, overwhelm, that's all coming from the evil, the dark side. So basically, God talks to us and the evil talks to us. Let me go back into history as to what really this planet is. This planet is actually a schooling planet where only the best and brightest and most courageous children of God get to come and play and learn. Think of this on spiritual on a college level. So this is where every spiritual being in the universe wants to come and experience life, and you must come here to learn to master this reality, persevere, endure, and overcome. But what people don't know is, as a schooling planet, God put all the evil in the universe on this one spot. Every piece of evil, every negativity is existing here. Every dark energy exists on this planet. And as a result, they control this planet. And 10% of the population works directly for the evil, the dark side, the negative energy. The dark energy will always be on this world in perpetuity because God gave it to him or them. And as a result, you have to remember, starting number one, that you only hear two kinds of voices. Humans hear either from the good and God or from the bad and the dark side. If you're hearing anything that's negative, it's coming from the dark side. If you're hearing things that are good, it's coming from God. And if you're hearing a mixture of good and bad, it's not coming from God. It's coming from something that's trying to fool you. All right, so your question was, how do you know that if you're not spiritually awake? First thing, you're not coming from love, then you're not coming from God. If you're coming from anything other than love, joy, peace, and harmony, it's not from God, because love, joy, peace, and harmony are divine. Happiness is a human trait. It's the highest level of positive energy, but that's still negative. But joy is truly a divine thing from the love of God within. So if you're taught to hate anything, or you're taught it's better to commit suicide by blowing yourself up to kill another person, that's not coming from God. So if you want to break the cycle, walk away from the situation, sit down and have a long chat with the Creator. Now, where I lived in San Diego was the home base of the son of the founder of Hamas, who had left Israel and Palestine and came to the United States. He didn't want to play the game anymore, and he became a devout Christian there, and he keeps quiet. But he speaks out about how the fact that his father perpetuated hate. On the other side of the coin, the Israelis do the same thing. I was there in Israel in 1983 and 84, and I was kicked out of the country because I wanted to make peace between both sets of people, Palestinians and Israelis. And the Israelis asked me to take a hike and go home. My friends who were on the Palestinian side, because I have Palestinian family members from the West Bank, they're Christian Palestinians, they were asked to stop or they would be beaten and thrown in jail. So neither side wanted them to stop, and they actually forced us apart. Hate perpetuates hate. Love perpetuates love. Choose differently. And how do they know now? If they're listening to this video, then they have to choose differently. Are you willing to give up your own life for the cause and have to come back and recycle and do this over? But remember, you're going to come back as the thing you hate. You're a Palestinian, you hate Jews, you're going to come back as a Jew. If you're an Israeli and you're Jewish or a Druid and Christian and you hate Palestinians or Hamas, you're going to come back as either Hamas or a Palestinian. Whether you're Ukrainian and Russian, stop hating each other. You're Chinese and Taiwanese, stop hating each other. You're black, stop hating whites. If you're white, stop hating blacks. Stop. You want the craziness in this world to stop? Stop disliking someone because they're different than you. Grow up. Now, here's another interesting thing the Spirit told me. For every 100 years of a spiritual faith's existence, it's like 1 year of a child. Hebrews, Israelites, and Jews are in their 57th year, so they're middle age. Catholics and Christians are in their 20s, early 20s. So they're just the age of adulthood and they can drink. And Muslims today are still in the teenage years. Nothing against anybody's particular faith. I'm grateful for everybody because in my faith, I have people from every background and walk of life. I have Sufi Muslims in the family. I have Hindu, Buddhist, Jews, Christians, Messianic Jews. Everybody's welcome in my family because everybody's welcome in heaven. And everybody's participating in this differentiation. Diversity, equity, and inclusion of life is the same thing in the other side or on the other side. And we must know that the first thing to stop us is ourselves. You want to change how you think and how you act and react in this world? Simply talk to God. Do Einstein. And in this group that we work with, everybody is from every walk of life and every background, and everybody's welcome. So if you're coming from hate, think again. Come from love, and you're always welcome in heaven. Otherwise, God will kick you out, and you got to go do this all over again. Now, if it takes you 10,000 lifetimes, or do you want to learn faster? Speaking of which, you were military. You knew that you took a 180 turn and went the other way. What made you change how you were doing things from being a soldier to being a lover and a person of peace?
After being really programmed to think that the uh, people in the Middle East were a threat, after seeing videos of people getting blown up by IEDs, soldiers being ambushed and attacked and killed, and then actually going over there and seeing some of the most kind people I've ever met in my life, some of the most loving people. These are not evil people. These are not people who want to do me harm. I look at them and I see my own family. They have kids, they have, children, they have wives, they have husbands, they have family. There's no difference between us. And yet I was, conditioned to think that they were. And I just woke up and realized that the path is not through hate. There's a lot of manipulation that goes on to get people to behave in a certain way, and I just didn't agree with that. And
the light bulb came on,
yeah.
and you said, I have to do this differently. So you actually answered your own question. How do the people in the Middle East change it? And most of them are loving and caring people. You have
Yeah.
manipulation on both sides by governments who benefit from war. You have everybody in this world is run by evil. If they don't know that, they have to decide, hey, I can't go down this path anymore. I'm going to choose to do this differently. My neighborhood where I live in Florida is a wonderful place in the town of Apopka. In my neighborhood, there's 85 homes, mixed families, black and white, Hispanic and Asian. There are people from Central Asia. There are people from West Africa. There are people from the Caribbean. There are people from Canada. There are people who are white and black. There are people from every walk of life. I feel like I'm in the United Nations neighborhood, and this is the best kept neighborhood. It is quiet. It is beautiful. Everybody cares. Everybody's loving. I think we have 8 people who were retired military, 4 Marines, 2 Air Force, and 2 Navy, and yet we also have young people, some people from Vietnam. It is just a wonderful, peaceful neighborhood. It is just a pleasure to walk around this place. I have never heard a bad word from anybody in any of the neighbors that I am with. Everybody loves one another and enjoys it. I mean, the toughest neighbors we had are black bears, alligators, and some other really large birds. That's about it. So you just had to be careful with them. They probably, were in their neighborhood where we are. So
Right. Wow. You're not the first person I've heard who had a near death experience that talked about the power of prayer when they were kind of outside of the earth and looking at the earth. Why do you feel like prayer is so strong? What is the significance of prayer? Just asking God for help and assistance, giving, some of my pain and suffering and asking for clarity and stuff. Why is that so powerful?
no matter what language you pray in, no matter what faith you pray in, praying is the key to our connection between our heart and God. You must come from your heart and not from your head if you want divine prayer to work instead. And as a result, you must use prayer as the turn on switch to get you divinely connected to everything that there is. Prayer, and then Einstein or some form of meditation. And you must utilize that. God wants to be involved in your life for everything. Every small thing you can think of, God wants you to be in his life, because in reality, he gave us this body to experience life. You use the body as a tool as it was meant to be, but God is experiencing life through us, and we're experiencing God through this divine connection. Prayer is the key to getting God's attention, and we use Einstein as the booster shot to get that prayer up higher, faster, farther on God's desk. So it doesn't matter if you pray whatever language, religion, way you do it. Prayer is the way to open the door. Behind me in the picture is a door. Take that lock, open it up, and the way you do that is through this divine method of prayer. Now, can you do it through meditation? Sure. There's many, many methods, but prayer is this link to connect us to the source of all that is, who and whatever you call the source that is. All of us on the planet are wearing a blindfold with only the smallest little sliver open underneath one eye. We place our hands out and touch this enormous animal like a huge elephant. And many of us touch this elephant, for lack of a better word, and believe that what we're touching is the only part of God that exists. I'm here to tell you no. But prayers work no matter where you are on that huge elephant with your blindfold on and your hand out. We're just experiencing God from a slightly different perspective. But prayer will get through no matter what. Remember, the message they said for me was the small prayers were these small little thin lights, streams coming up from earth, and the large prayers were these big pieces of light that looked like tree trunks where multiple people were praying simultaneous for the same thing. So, you want to make a difference in the world? You want to stop people from killing each other and hating each other? Then get together on the day of prayer and make a difference and pray for peace, pray for calm, pray to an end of all warfare, whether it's physical, emotional, or spiritual. And remember, most warfare is like an iceberg. 95% of it can't be seen. The tip of the iceberg is only the part we experience. So the warfare is not just for earthly things, it is on the spiritual side as well. So the warfare is behind us. And in that, somebody tried to kick in an ad and knock me off. So I said, God must be telling us it's time.
Yes, as we unwind, I like to ask my last two final questions. What does love mean to you, Doctor?
Love.
Yes.
Uh, it is a key word. It is the seed of God within our hearts that resides. It is everything. God is everything, and it is love, that ultimate frequency of 528. If you know your megahertz frequencies when you do alternative medicine, that ultimate frequency of what God is. God is love. We are children of God, and no matter who or what we call ourselves, and we are part of that love. So love is us. We are that love made manifest as a human being.
Yeah, I didn't even get to talk to you about frequencies and stuff. I wanted to, but I'll have to do that next time. But yeah. So then the last question, which my audience usually loves, what does the sun represent to you?
SON and SUN has two different meanings, two different words, but it all comes down to the source. SUN is the brightest thing in the sky locally to us. It's what keeps us alive. According to the angels, humans best could understand the power of God by the power of the sun, SUN. Now, take that energy one farther step. As we get interference from the other side, buy me. The SUN versus the SON deals with that Son of God. And what is that Son of God? And we're going to have to go and do this portion over again because interference keeps sending me advertisements, which keep cutting me off. So it's SUN versus SON, DEI versus DIE. They're all different manifestations of a different form of the reality of God, the Creator, versus God, the reality for us humans in this holographic universe. And how we see that sun versus sun is a matter of interpretation of how we experience God through faith, a being that helps us trust in God's connection, us through them to get us higher, and our own belief in our ability to be that divine self, that divinity within that connects us with the LOV, the SON, and the SUN in the power of the divine's energy, frequency, and love that reminds us who we are, children of God. We're all brothers and sisters on this planet, and we all volunteered to come here. It's time to wake up. And the near death experience does that, which is rather rude and it's slap in the face, but it's pre programmed from heaven. And it's our job to wake up. The funny thing is, Sage, 2/3 of the people who've had near death experiences don't want to talk about it. They don't want to share the gifts that they've been given. A third of them, like myself, have this gift, an actual direction. You will share a simple technique to heal yourself with other people. And they go and they live that with passion and bring that through love for their fellow human beings to help one another through love. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve God the Creator and the God within each of us, our fellow men and women.
Yes, well spoken. Thank you so much, Dr. Scott, for your time.
And
Where can
thank you,
people,
Sage.
yes, where can people find you, reach out to you, learn more?
Again, you can go to uh, there are no lines in heaven.com. It's an HTTPS two dots // the colon. And then they can find me there. They can also, of course, find me here. You can get a hold of me through my website or you can contact me through my phone number. Yes, I will give people my phone number 760-917-2625. That's 760-917-2625. And you will see me on YouTube videos, podcasts. There was one I just did from Dallas, Good Morning Dallas talk show. And I will see you on LinkedIn and every other platform you can think of. I think I just showed up on Spotify this morning. So it's very interesting. So you name it, you'll find me. And of course, Sage, I'm sure that on your particular site, when you do this podcast, you'll have all my contact information there so people can get a hold of me directly.
Yes, absolutely. If you are looking to reach out to Dr. Scott, all the information will be in the description box below. And yeah, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Scott, and thank you all for listening. Praise the Son. We'll see you next time.
Praise the Son. God bless to everyone. Amen.
Thank you.